Elevate is on the table next, as we'll be dealing with them for our 32 on 32, and a squad, honestly, that has been kind of surprising me, as I thought this was one of the teams that made a couple of very questionable roster changes, but it looks like so far it's going pretty well for Whalers and Lacefield, as they've been carrying this team to a number of great victories, and this is a squad that search and destroy is honestly a major consideration for them. This and more as we break down Elevate in this 32 on 32. COD fans, welcome back. IHOLDSHIFT with you. I hope you're enjoying the video series so far. I'm having a lot of fun making these, so that's definitely good on my end. Hopefully you guys are sharing that same kind of happiness. Now, this Elevate squad, let's dig into it, because this is a squad that, honestly, the expectations are hard to kind of pin down. I would say all over the place, but I can't really say that because I honestly have no idea which Elevate we're going to see. We've seen this team do a very good work against notable squads during the time at the Cross Divisional. They did not have the longest standing run when it came to their time at Miami. They were able to send Midnight to Game 5, but again, Midnight didn't look convincing in that, neither did Elevate. So what do we really want to expect for this team? Well, let's take a look at their pool first. They've got a tough draw. It's got eUnited in it, and then the Bhoys, the number one team from the CWL Open bracket, and then you've also got RBL Esports, a squad that honestly I think has a lot of just hidden potential in it. So, as you take down Elevate, what are their chances here? Again, I want to remind you of their roster, because if I'm being candid, this is a roster that I very often forget some of the pieces to, just because they've been moved around so much. It's Profizi, Whalers, Lacefield, Believe, and M. Ruiz. And it's been a very interesting journey, I think, for these five guys. As you look at the SMG duo of M. Ruiz and Profizi, Lacefield and Believe have been doing a nice job at the Maddox, but it's Whalers who's kind of been, I think, the biggest surprise. He's been performing very, very highly, the Frenchman with the main AR slot. So it's just interesting because Elevate's been all over the board. Again, not being Elevate to start the entire CWL, buying into the spot halfway through, and then making a handful of roster changes when those were available have kind of left Elevate looking for an identity. So let's take a look as far as what this team has been able to do as far as their placements, and obviously their placement when they were in Division B, it was an 8th place finish for them. At Vegas and Fort Worth, we technically don't include this squad because Elevate was not around for it. It was London where this team really started to take place and get together. That was when the organization entered in. And yeah, the roster is still widely different than what it was back then, but the organization as a whole, that's when they entered into the scene. It was a top 12 at Anaheim. And then again, like I mentioned, that Game 5 loss to Midnight in Miami, which was, again, a play-in bracket spot for them. It's been interesting to kind of keep an eye on what this team has been successful at. Again, you just take a look at just their general record. This is a squad that in total, as an organization as a whole, is 11-25 in the map win-loss, or pardon me, the matches win-loss. In maps, they're 66-89, not the greatest. But you look at what this current roster has been able to do in modes specifically, and it's interesting because a couple of their hardpoint losses were very, very close, like 230 plus to 250, but even still, they're not holding a very great average when they're looking at a 3-7 map win-loss ratio in hardpoint specifically. It's about a minus 40 or so points in the differential average when they play on hardpoint, and it's kind of the similar story as you flip on over and take a look at their control, where they're only 1-4, and honestly, none of those games have really been all that close. So where do you want to look at for Elevate as far as their strengths? My first bit is their search and destroy. And I think this pool is going to be pretty search and destroy heavy. Lacefield and Whalers have been incredible at search and destroy. Lacefield Sniper, I think, can combat against that of Simps. It just comes down to, will the rest of the supporting staff get involved and start making this a little bit of an easier trip? Because again, they're only 3-4. That's not bad over 7 maps, but it's also not great. And for a new roster, okay, I'll give you a little bit of credit, but that can't be considered anymore. We're at World Championships. You have to be able to get those wins decisively if you're going to make it through this pool in specific. I'm not really all that hopeful, to be honest, with this team. So I think, again, you look at the search, it needs to get better, but I also want to tune your attention to Lacefield. These are his overall pro stats you're seeing on screen here, and honestly, these stat lines are pretty damn good. It just comes down to, can they close out around him? Now, again, this is a team-based game. You're not going to see individuals being able to solo carry unless your name is Dylan and you're playing up against Luminosity. But as a Maddox player, Lacefield has found a lot of favor when it comes to helping Elevate win games. He's got a .95 rating, which is very solid, and a .94 average KD, which is, again, pretty darn solid considering the teams that he's been on throughout the entirety of the year. Going back to the PLQ when he didn't qualify, he was actually one of my top 2 free agents that were available to get picked up as either a sub or a replacement. And lo and behold, he's also the playmaker now for Elevate. I want to break down this team a little bit more in detail. I did not get a chance to sit down with anybody from Elevate and get an interview. I was hoping to catch one of them, but it didn't really pan out that way. So going into this squad, again, when you're going up against eUnited, here's the good news. You hold a 1-1 map win-loss ratio against eUnited. So there is some hope there. But again, that's all before this roster currently existed. This current roster has been in a very interesting position, I think, just generally speaking. Again, a lot of their hardpoint losses were very, very close. I'm looking at a 245 to 250. I'm looking at a 193 to 250 and a 175 to 250. And some of their wins have also been very, very narrow as well, which is why that differential is so widely spread. A 250 to 242, a 250 to 236. So they've not really decidedly won any hardpoint matches, except for once that they played up against Gen G. That was the only map that they won. It was a 250 to 156. I want to tune the attention back to the Search and Destroy. This is where this team has been very, very good, at least in this scheme of things. They have one really bad loss. That was versus Gen G. It was a 1-6, but everything else has gone round 9 or above. So that's definitely great as far as being able to at least outlast your opponents and get some extra longevity into the maps in specific. It just comes down to, can you really start cleaning things up in the respawn department? It seems strange to think because a lot of pro teams will just spend all of their time exclusively scrimming on hardpoints and things like that and respawns and not really bothering doing much search and destroy because they don't want to leak strats. So a lot of theory crafting and map drawing and stuff like that goes into search and destroy. But it's interesting because this hardpoint and control for Elevate has not really been decisive or convincing in any fashion at all throughout this entire time of this roster. In fact, their only win on control was a 3-2 win versus Midnight. That was during the cross divisional. So this is a tough road, honestly speaking. I've said a lot of words, and this is the takeaway if you're still, avidly paying attention. This squad has a really big uphill battle to fight, and this pool is not going to be very favorable towards them because you're dealing with a team in the Bhoys where, again, that roster should be very, very good at search and destroy. They have a lot of experience with one another. You've got Shawnee and Bance who have CWL experience, so they know they're able to at least slay at the level that Elevate has been able to bring to the table, if not been above that. So I'm terrified for this team. And even beyond that, you take a look at the RBL Esports squad, again, previously known as Fire Sticks. That's a team that can frag too when it comes to the respawn. So, I mean, if you're Elevate, you need to clean up the hard point and control. If they come out looking flat, I would just say this. If you're out there and you're a betting man, I wouldn't put many bets on Elevate. I would definitely be betting against them a lot of the time because if they look cold in the respawn department, I think this one is pretty much all but over as far as how far they're going to be able to move through this bracket or this pool, rather. Again, just kind of giving you the general wrap-up for it. Pool A, eUnited I've got as a for sure lock coming through. It's going to be between the Bhoys and Elevate to close things out as the second seed. I've got the Bhoys taking that one, and then it really, I think, just comes down to Elevate and RBL Esports, what happens there. I think that Elevate finishes in the 3rd spot for this pool. I'm not sure if that actually is in line with what I had said earlier, but as I'm kind of been breaking these down, I kind of have a new list of predictions, at least a more formalized version of predictions. And Elevate, I think, this is not one of those teams that you're going to see make a major run. They haven't looked super great at all besides their search and destroy. And again, like I mentioned, it has not been convincing for them. So a tough pool for Elevate. Again, sorry, we don't really get an interview with those guys, but it's the way it goes sometimes. So hopefully this was a nice little recap for you guys as far as my expectations and where this team is either found or lost favor in the last couple of weeks. And until the next video, hope you guys all keep holding it down. Later, bye-bye.